Hello, everyone, and welcome to Planet Outlook. Our guest today is an award winning scientist, Dr. Vidya Athreya. Vidya is going to tell us fascinating things about leopards. When we think of wildlife, we think of national parks and sanctuaries. But unknown to many of us, there is a lot of wildlife outside our protected areas, like in villages, like in cities like Mumbai. So today, Vidya is going to tell us how we live with leopards in villages and in cities. A Marathi film has been done on her work. It's called Ajoba by a national award winning filmmaker. But more on this with Vidya.
Thanks for calling me for the show. When I started working in the rural areas of Western Maharashtra, that is the Nashik, Pune districts, I realized that there were a lot of leopards and hyenas in the parts where there was permanent um, irrigation. So all these places about 40 years back did not have irrigation, and they were semi-arid areas. Semi-arid means not much rainfall, prone to drought, and they used to have wild animals like wolves, which live in drier areas. But after irrigation came in, and there was 24/7 croplands, vegetables, sugarcane, then the habitat changed, and the wolves couldn't stay in this habitat, and they left, and species like leopards, hyenas now live in these landscapes. So it was really interesting because even I didn't think they should be there when I started working, because that was where my training was, that was where my worldview was. Like, we were taught that wildlife is in wildlife places and not in human places. So I had to unlearn some of my training and my reading, because what I saw in front of me was very different.
So tell us about your work on this particular leopard, which made national headlines and international headlines.
As part of this work, we were trying to understand how species like leopards, which are large cats, can live in rural habitation. So apart from doing other aspects of the leopard ecology there, the forest department was very keen. In fact, the senior most officer, the chief wildlife warden at that time, he was really keen that we collar the animals in order to track them 24/7. So these collars are essentially a band that you put around the animal's neck, which has a chip that gets its location, just like a phone has a GPS enabled system. These collars have a GPS enabled system, and the location of the animal is sent to the computer via a SMS, to put it very simply. Now, why do we need such a thing to study leopards? Because wild animals are very, very, very secretive, especially when they live among human beings. So it's really hard to see them, or to study their behavior based on their visual studies. So we use things like these collars. So we had put the collar on this leopard, which was actually, what had happened was, in these landscapes, the leopards eat quite a lot of domestic dogs, because there is very high numbers of domestic dogs, and it falls in the nice size category for a leopard to catch. So he had chased this dog which fell in a well, and the leopard also fell in the well after him. And when the leopard was taken out, the forest department contacted us, and we put a collar on him. So, as is done in most cases, now this well was in a human use landscape, it was in a field. But at that time, especially 10 years back, people always said, these leopards belong to the forest. So he was driven about 60 kilometers away to the nearest forest area, and he was released there. To our greatest surprise, using this technology, we could track where he was going. So, which meant every hour we knew where he was remotely. Like, I could log on to my computer and I could see where he was. So we realized that he is making a beeline, or a leopard line, for Bombay. He walked. So overall, in 25 days, this leopard whom we named Azoba. I'll tell you why later. He walked about 125 kilometers in 25 days. And he really surprised us because he crossed the Mumbai-Agra highway, he crossed the Kasara railway station. He also crossed two other wildlife sanctuaries, but he didn't want to stay there. He wanted to go to Sanjay Gandhi National Park, where he lived for 2 years, because after 2 years he was found dead, killed in a road accident. Now, why did we name him Azoba? Azoba means grandfather in Marathi. And when we captured him, he was like this gentle old cat. And so it was just fitting to call him grandfather. And normally the older cats, just like in human beings, if you pick up my teenage daughter and son and you send them to US, they may or may not stay there. But if you pick me up, I have a family here, everything, and put me in the US, I'm definitely going to come back. So it's very similar in these animals, where the younger animals can go and make new homes elsewhere, but the older animals invariably home back. And you can see that even in a house cat or a domestic dog. So we believe that he went back to Bombay because that's where his home was. We don't have proof, but the way he went back, he did not go here and there. He just knew where he was going. And his path, which you can see on the map, just takes him back to Mumbai, and he stayed there for 2 years. So that is the story, and his story really inspired a lot of people. And I think when Sujay Dahake, the filmmaker, read it in a news article, he decided this is going to be my next protagonist in the movie, and that's how the movie was made.
So how was it like to be portrayed by someone like Urmila Matondkar as Vidya Athreya?
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience because that is not where I belong. I'm not in the arts world, I'm not in the movie world, and their world seems so different than our biology. So it was really interesting to get together and make this movie that came out of it. It was an interesting experience, yeah.
काल रात्री हा बिबटे इथे वरती छतावरती बसलेला होता आणि येणाऱ्या जाणाऱ्या माणसांवर
काय चाललंय काय तुमचे?
काय 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 झालं मॅडम?
17 वर्ष काम करते मी या फील्डवर, देशभर फिरून बघते, समजून घेण्याचा प्रयत्न करते काय परिस्थिती आपल्या देशातल्या प्राण्यांची, का ऱ्हास होतोय त्यांचा.
आई घातली फॉरेस्ट मध्ये आलो.
The first cat that you collared and named Ajoba had traveled through a lot of multiple landscapes, highways, kind of thing. If you just quickly narrate how it basically traveled through various landscapes, because people think still that the leopard is moving through a forested area. But
Right. So he was caught in a village landscape, and he was released in just at the bottom of the Western Ghats, okay? So which is forested, which has tribal communities living there, and all our presumption was that he is going to live there because it's a forested landscape. It doesn't have many human beings. But to my greatest surprise, he walked up the Western Ghats again, and then he just started moving westwards, and this was taking him through. Initially there was forest because he was in the Western Ghats, but then later on it was all rural landscape, and he was moving in the night and sitting in the day. And that is what pretty much most wild animals do when they're using human dominated landscapes. They are active only in the night. So he was crossing agricultural fields in the night. He crossed the Mumbai-Agra highway in the night. He crossed the Kasara railway station. Then again, he went through rural landscapes. He went past Tanza Wildlife Sanctuary. He went past Tungareshwar Wildlife Sanctuary. And then he was in Vasai Industrial Estate, which is an industrial estate north of Bombay. And when I saw that point, my heart jumped, almost... I had a heart attack. But fortunately, because that time 10 years back, the signals, we wouldn't get it immediately. I realized it's a 3-day old signal or something. So and I hadn't heard of any problems. So he had moved from there. And then the Ghodbunder Road, which is the road connecting Mumbai and Gujarat, he used that a couple of times. Then he was mainly on the hills of, north of Sanjay Gandhi National Park. That is where he lived. Then he swam across the creek, which is about 100 meters, and he went into the main Sanjay Gandhi National Park. He was there for 3-4 days, and then he swam back, and then he just lived in that northern part. 2 years later, a person called, I think, Hitendra Mota, if I'm not mistaken, he was driving on that Ghodbunder, on the main road, when he saw the leopard being hit by a vehicle, and his family was in his car. He picked up this leopard, whose collar was not there by then, it had fallen off. And he picked up this unconscious leopard and put it in the boot of his car and drove for an hour to the national park, where the leopard died by the time, the veterinarian and all saw it. But we had put a microchip in it, which is a small chip with a number. So then when they read that microchip, they realized it's Azoba. And that's how he passed away. So that's the story. Yeah.
But you have seen during the course of your work how sugarcane farmers in Maharashtra are completely at ease with leopards in their fields. And then there is this set of violent images which comes into the public domain through newspapers, WhatsApp, social media, of conflict. So how do you kind of explain this at one side, where some farmers, some rural people are completely at ease with such a large cat, and then there is this violent images coming from across the country, which completely shows a very different picture?
Yeah, so there are two issues here. One, let me tell you, it's not that, human beings are never homogeneous. So the way human beings respond to leopards, even the farmers, is like how we city people respond to dogs. There are some people who really love them, and there are some people who really don't like them. And there's always a conflict between the people, depending on, in a building society, for instance, some people are feeding the dogs, some others don't like the dogs. And now these two groups of people have a conflict with each other over the dog, right? So it's very similar with the leopards, and it's similar with any wildlife issue. We believe now that increasingly it is this conflict between people which the animal kind of is a symbol for. Okay, so having said that, it's not that every farmer is okay with the leopards, but what we have seen is that more or less they are much more accepting, not just of leopards, they're jungle cats, they're hyenas, they're all kinds of wildlife. That rural people in India are much more accepting of these animals than we believe them to be.
वाघोबा मतलब हमारे गांव का राखनदार है, वो गांव में अड़चन आता है ना, वो रक्षा करता है, ऐसा हम लोग उसका पूजा करते हैं, हमारा गांव का देव है.
It's a new emerging field of study where we are trying to understand how people view or perceive these animals in their landscape. And our studies have shown that where people have shared these landscapes for a very long time. Now you have to realize that all these human-dominated rural croplands are not croplands overnight. It's not that there was some forest last year and today. These are very, very old civilizations who have lived there for thousands of years, these human-dominated landscapes in India. And so have all the animals who have lived there. So it's a history of shared spaces. And what we are finding is where there's a longer history of shared spaces, there seems to be many mechanisms and there seems to be a greater understanding of the species that they share the space with. So, they are not as fearful as people who have never lived with these animals. That is one part. The other part is that it's the role of the media, where media reports incidences which get the most sensational response. So even when I started working there, I was just thinking about attacks on people. And to my greatest surprise, I found that these are so rare. What is more common is people interacting with these animals, people seeing these animals because they come to the houses to drink water and all. The farmer will tell you, yeah, he comes here and drinks. The same trough where he has kept water for his livestock in the daytime. In the nighttime, wild animals are coming to drink, and he sees it. It's not that he doesn't see it, So it's a couple of things that have led to us believing that it's only conflict.
Yeah, even in Shimla, where I visited your kind of field site, it's a very popular hill station. A lot of people moving in and out. But your work has shown that there is good activity of leopards. If you can narrate those incidents to viewers, that
Yeah, so we did some camera trapping in the town of Shimla, and again, the leopards are using that landscape, but they have learned that they need to use it only in the night. See, at the end of the day, we are the ultimate predator on the planet. We may think that these cats are the predators, but who kills these wildlife in largest numbers are human beings. So, and it's been like centuries of this. So we are the species they are most scared of, and they keep away from us. So in the night time, in all areas, especially in a place like Shimla, which is so cold, the activity of human beings pretty much disappears. Even the rural landscapes, people, it's not like a Bombay where even in the night at 12 you can go and have chai. It's not like that. It shuts down the rest of rural India, other places like Shimla, and that's the time that the wild animals use for their movements. So it was really interesting because we didn't also think that there will be leopards there. And it is not just Shimla, but even the surrounding areas, which have, Himachal, states like Himachal and Uttarakhand have a lot of forest cover. So it's forest and habitations, villages, towns, it's all interspersed. So I remember once the forest guard, he said, come, there is this one person's house. He had told me a leopard comes there, and we went there, and this grandfather, who was also part of the panchayat, I think, he had his, 1-year-old grandkid holding the grandkid, and he's telling us, oh, the leopard just goes in front of our house. And we asked him, what about your livestock? He said, oh, they are, we have a proper shed for them and they are completely covered in the night. And we got a spectacular image of this leopard going in front of his house, which I'll share with you. Maybe you can show the viewers then.
These landscapes are changing very fast. And what we understand from your work and all, like cats, like leopards, huge these fringe areas, because the core forest habitats are used by a bigger predator like the tiger. So the tiger and the leopard don't share a very cozy relationship. So these areas are also changing fast and all. So when we say living with leopards, how do you see the road ahead kind of thing for this cat?
Yeah. See, the thing is that a lot of species, like even elephants, all these large species need large spaces just because their body size is large. Yeah. And habitat loss is like accelerating. We keep talking about habitat loss, and it's sadly something that you and I can't control, right? We can protest and we can say this shouldn't happen, but it's not in our power to control. So for me, the question is, what can we control? And I find we can control how people respond to these animals. Things might change. It's not in my control. I cannot say anything about it. I cannot do anything about it. But let's find a solution and all that. And that is the way I see this going forward. Can we at least change the way people deal with these situations, deal with these issues, and deal with these animals? Now, it is not only dealing with the animals. A lot of it is dealing with humans. How can we change human behavior, which is what we have done in Bombay, which really surprised me. So, that is the way I see the way going forward.
And tell us a bit of the Bombay work, the Mumbaikars for SGNP, which kind of you helped started kind of thing with the forest department.
Right. So Bombay used to be a place which had a lot of leopard attacks on people. See, it has this one park, Sanjay Gandhi National Park, which is just 100 square kilometers, which is the remnant biodiversity of what Bombay used to have. It's a cultural place. It has Buddhist caves, and it is a natural heritage as well as cultural. It also supplies close to 10% of Bombay's drinking water. So it's very crucial lifeline for Mumbaikars. Now, in all this, it had the leopards. And there were a lot of attacks. I remember just in 1 month of May, I think 2004, if I'm not mistaken, there were just like in 1 month, there were 19 attacks on people. So when a really, dynamic forest officer came there in 2011, he said, let us try and do something about this. So we debated and we decided then that instead of doing a research project, let us try and do something to ease this problem over here in the long term. So the usual strategy that is used everywhere, which is thought to be a solution, but which doesn't work, is this thing of capture and release. So people see the leopard and they say, oh, catch it, and then go leave it in the forest. But what our study found is that if these leopards are caught only because they are seen, not because they've done anything. You catch these leopards and you leave them all in some places, then the attacks on people can increase near those release sites. And now this could be because these leopards are totally stressed. It could be because they are highly territorial and they had their home and they knew their home. They knew how to avoid people. But when they are sent to this new release site, they don't know the place. And in India, nowhere is there a place without human beings. And that's the first, there are children everywhere. So we realized that in Bombay also this was a problem, that a lot of capture release was happening and we needed to stop it. But the reason why it was happening was because people around the park would see these leopards and immediately they would put political pressure to trap it. So we had to change the mindset. Unless we changed the mindset, they were not going to do that. So then we decided we'll have a collaborative project where we'll include everybody, citizens, the forest department, and then forest department engages with police and the municipality and other stakeholders. So we call the project Mumbaikars for SGNP, and it's now 10 years or so, it's still going on. And what it has done is essentially the aim was live with the leopards, because how much ever you remove, it wasn't working. It was increasing the problem. So the only other solution is live with them, but learn how to live with them, right? So that people often don't know, and that is where we can help. So the forest department did a lot of nice things as well, in the sense they have an amazing rescue team. They have made a lot of partnerships with the police, with the municipality. They have, with the citizens that are involved, they have workshops with the police. The police used to tell us, why are you coming and talking to us about leopards? Why can't you all keep them inside the park? Then we had to tell them, they don't listen to us. Okay, they are going to come out because the dogs are outside, the pigs are outside, and they are going to come. But if there's an emergency situation, we need your help. And it was incredible because the police, that's all we needed to tell them. And the work is like, I think just a few months back before the lockdown, they had a round of police station workshops around the park, the Mumbaikars for SGNP. So it is incredible. Although if you had asked me, would it work, with the urban people, I would have said, I don't know. But you can change mindsets. All you need is engagement with the people, proactive engagement before the problem is there.
Before I let you go, one kind of last thing is, what it's like to be a wildlife researcher when you collar a large cat like this and you follow it every day. There would be now a lot of people listening to this who are aspirational wildlife scientists who wants to come into this field. There may be a lot of youngsters. So give us a picture. How is it like to track a cat for hundreds of kilometers for many, many months?
I think I went without a lot of sleep. So the thing is that if you're working on these cats, when they live inside a protected area, life is blissful, because there's not going to be a problem. You can wake up in the morning, go track it, watch it, and everything's happy and nice. You'll get a nice publication out of it. But when you're tracking these animals who live among people, you don't get sleep at night because you're just so scared. Although they didn't do anything. None of the animals we collared who were living among people, hurt people or killed people. But it is just, what if something happens? So it is a bit different when you're I mean, it's really I was relieved when all the collars dropped off, because these collars automatically drop off after a period of time. And it is fascinating, and afterwards, to see all this. But when that was happening, it was really a bit scary for me. Maybe somebody else will deal with it better. But at the end of the day, I think it was totally worth it doing that work, because it actually showed how these animals live among people.
And quick last words for the young brigade who are aspirational wildlife scientists or researchers.
Yeah, it's really important to realize that wildlife biology is a science, which means that you have to base your interpretation on the information you find and not on your opinions. So, if I'd kept on believing other people who kept telling me, no, leopards cannot be living in human-dominated landscapes, I would have never found out anything new. You are all capable of finding out new things as long as you keep your minds open to finding out new things, is what I would like to say.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ananda.